time ball.
That's one of our favorite recipes.
We learned it on our trip to Atlantis.
So what does a time ball taste like?
You don't eat it.
You hold it, and your surroundings become whatever decade you think of.
Cool.
Hey, remember those snakeskin tacos?
Yum.
Oh, best.
Smells like sardines.
Well, if it smells like sardines, then you made it right.
Thanks for your help. Okay, guess I can go get Aunt Hilda's jeans. 60s, here I come.
Ladies, gentlemen, 10,000 maniacs, welcome to episode number 32 of Sabrina's Witch Trials. This is the show where each episode we venture back into the mid-1990s to rewatch, review, and reminisce all about everyone's favorite Friday night spellfest, Sabrina, the Teenage Witch. I'm Fil Araujo, and folks, get ready to gun that DeLorean to 88, fire up that TARDIS, and come up with a third time machine reference, because I could only find two, because this episode of the Witch Trials, we're going back in time, and we're going to cover episode number 32 of Sabrina the Teenage Witch, Gadda Sabrina. And of course, if we're going back in time, I need a guest, and I need to get the oldest guest I possibly could, the absolute oldest guest I could, and nobody else but Fil Araujo comes to mind. Phil, welcome back to the show. How you doing?
Good. How are you, Al?
I'm doing great. To be perfectly honest to the listener, Phil is being incredibly sweet, and he is quite under the weather, but agreed to do the show, and champion that he is sticking to it.
Yes, Father Time has caught up to me, and with the seasons being the way they are, I am one who goes through seasonal allergies, so I apologize ahead of time for sounding like there's a frog stuck in my throat.
Listen, like I told you before the show, no matter what you sound like, you're still going to sound like the most manly person on this podcast. Okay? But yes, you mentioned Father Time, and at your prolonged age, you probably have diseases that died out centuries ago.
Yes, luckily I had the polio vaccine, and
all those. How are your rubella shots? You got all those?
I am not that old, Al. I just want to let you know. I was born in 1982.
I know, but it's gonna be fun to play you up as the old guy.
Oh, look at that old guy over there. At a decent 36.
I know. My God, he's not even middle aged.
I mean, we can't even use most of his stats in statistics. Ugh.
God, he remembers when you used to be fair, you did use a typewriter in high school. But part of that was because we weren't the richest people in the world.
No, I mean, all of my friends had computers, and we had a word processor. I mean, who the fuck had a word processor? I mean, really.
The half step that nobody bothered to take except us.
I mean, it was a laptop that looked like a laptop, but it was a word processor. It's like, come on, just get me a word processor, damn it.
Actual
give me a
programs.
freaking computer word processor. Look at me, I'm losing my mind.
And then we got a Packard Bell, and everything was great.
Hey, that was a 200 megahertz, Al. Come on.
The crazy thing is those are still really popular in Europe. So if you walk into a European electronics store, they still sell Packard Bells.
Oh yeah.
Insane. But Phil, aside from late 90s technology, we're also here to talk about Sabrina the Teenage Witch, episode 32, Gadda Sabrina. And Phil, as you know, as an old pro at this, I ask my guests to describe the episode of Sabrina the Teenage Witch we watched in a set number of words. And today, Phil, I need you to describe Gadda Sabrina in exactly 10 words.
10 words, Al. Well, I'm usually prepared for this, but due to my illness...
Mm-hmm.
It will take me a minute to get to it.
Phil, 10 words. Let me hear it.
Sabrina is thrown into the 60s where women were discriminated.
Nailed it, Phil. Got it in one. Professional as ever. And that is absolutely true. Sabrina, somewhat stupidly, is surprised that sexism is and was a thing, but we'll get there. We open in the Spellman kitchen where... the family's eating dinner while ignoring Salem's pleas for meat. as they think he's gotten a little too thick. And Phil, you can be assured that I spelled thick with 2 C's, like it's supposed to be spelled.
Not like Robin Thicke?
No. The worst way to spell thick, if you ask me. That guy's a fuckhead.
Oh, his dad was a great actor.
His dad was a great man. He has really sullied the name Thick. That's going to sound really weird out of context to anyone. Salem scoffs at Zelda's suggestion that he go on a diet, noting that he's just big-boned, which is an excuse no one believes, trust me. But when he leaves to go through his cat door, he gets stuck, and the scene ends with Salem telling the family that if they laugh, they die. Okay, Phil.
Yes, sir.
First thing that stuck out to me here is I just really love like scenes where we get to see the Spellmans all having dinner together.
Yeah, you do like that family dynamic, like when you see them like the stereotypical, like everybody sitting at the table.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, when we saw the Ted Beat Dad episode where, you know, they were all sitting there. Okay, besides it being highly, you know, racist and stereotypical, you did like that family dynamic of, and I think it has a little bit to do with, because that's how we spend our time as a family.
That is true.
Around the dinner table. So I think for you, I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think that may bring that a little bit back to that.
I'm just glad you didn't put words in my mouth like Al thinks women are lesser and they should be paid less.
You can't go to this college, Sabrina.
You can't go to this fictitious college.
Yes. We'll talk about the names of these colleges later.
Anyway, that is true though. I do love, I love to see the characters together because I think it really highlights the fact that they are more than just separate characters playing against one another. They are meant to be a family, and I think you do get that feeling when you have scenes like this. That said, there is no way that telling Salem he's fat like that is not hugely insulting. Like, they're just like blatantly like, Salem, cut it out. You're fucking huge. Like, had they done this to like Sabrina, people would rightly be revolting. But like, because it's the cat, it's like, you know, even though he is technically a human in a cat's body, it's just like, stop body shaming the cat.
Hey, what's a cat have to do around here to get something dead?
Salem, you've had enough to eat already.
No offense, but you're turning into a furry blimp.
What? I'm as live as a jungle cat. Besides, so far today, I've only had 10 of the 12 food groups.
What's left, chocolate and lard?
I mean, you also have to think about it, Al. This is like 21 years ago where, you know, I don't want to say political correctness wasn't a thing, but we were less, I guess it was less politically correct, especially on a show like this, to be like, oh, you know, it's a fat cat, blah, blah, blah. Where
that is fair, and it isn't like they're shaming like Sabrina or Hilda or anything.
Well, even if I think if they did even back then, it probably wouldn't be such an outrage as it would be today.
There is an episode coming up in season 4, I think, where Sabrina tries to get into a dress for like a dance, and she buys magical weight loss shakes.
Just use magic, like you
Honestly,
said last episode. Magic can solve all your problems.
I would love it if whoever had to like proofread the script, they could kill a script if they were able to write just use magic and it solved the issue. Then again, half of the episodes would be gone. What stuck out to you here, Phil?
A couple of things kind of stuck out to me. You know, they talked about that he's only eaten 10 out of 12 food groups. Mm-hmm. And Sabrina asks, "What's left? Lard and chocolate?"
Butter and lard, I think.
I thought it was. Well, you might be right. I thought it was chocolate and lard, but you might be right.
Either way, what's up? What do you like about it?
I just thought it was funny.
It's a good line. I think that there's a weird like kind of edit there because that's where there's a cut, so it feels like they held that for too long. But yeah, it is a good line. I thought that in terms of fashions, everybody looked okay except for Hilda.
Okay.
Did you spot her like very? It was a velvety kind of top, but it was like pea green. And it was like a mock turtleneck, but also had buttons. It was a fascinating piece of clothing to look at. Like, I felt like if I saw a millennial girl wearing this, I would think she looked hot as hell. But on Hilda in 1997, it was questionable to say the least.
I mean, I'll kind of talk a little bit about it later.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, most of the outfits I thought this episode, there was nothing really outrageous.
No, I agree. I think this is, I mean, especially considering we have a lot of like 60s costumes coming up, I thought that like there was a shockingly little group of costumes to pick from for the back of the linen closet,
which made it like super hard because usually it's like, oh, there's like a good 4 or 5 contenders where you're sitting here like, oh my gosh, like I had to literally watch it 3 times to like find something.
Yeah, and oddly enough, Harvey not really getting not too many bad outfits for Harvey in this episode, which is the first in a while. Right.
I mean, like I said, not many all around.
He's good. He's good old reliable usually.
What I do want to touch on, and you know, this is my segment, Al.
Oh yes, you mean you mean Phil's credit corner or Phil's costume corner?
Phil's costume corner. The opening. So before we move on, because I don't want to go all the way back, do you remember what Sabrina was wearing and what she said?
I did note this one because I watched this episode several times. She is in a clown outfit.
That is correct.
And I did notice she had like impressively large shoes. Like even for a clown, they were really big.
I mean, they were like aircraft carriers. Yes,
it was impressive. And I believe her joke is something along the lines of like, "Nobody takes me seriously."
That is exactly what she says, Al.
There it is.
Thank you for that 10 seconds I'll never get back from my life, Sabrina. Thank you.
I do feel like eventually I'm going to have to edit like all of these together, like just one long compilation of all of Phil's criticisms of Sabrina's stupid outfits.
I'll tell you what, you could all see it on YouTube, everybody, if you're interested.
That's true. Search Sabrina's Witch Trials on YouTube. Not only are all the podcast episodes up there, but some lovely trial brief short videos I've produced about certain fun bits from Witch Trials episodes. Check it out there.
Ted Beat Dad. You got to check it out if you're out there.
Ted Beat Dad literally has hundreds of views.
See, come on, hundreds of people. You got to go out there. Add the number. We need revenue.
If you want the views, you got to put Phil in the video. That's what I found out.
Because he sounds like Archer.
That is true. In the kitchen, Zelda and Sabrina are getting themselves breakfast and again ignoring Salem's food begging. Hilda then enters, wondering where the fuck her landlubbers are, and Sabrina eventually puts together that she's talking about some bell-bottom jeans she had in the 60s. Zelda lets Hilda know that she got rid of those years ago, and Hilda just bemoans the fact that now that hip huggers are back in, her hips remain unhugged. Sabrina soon realizes she's late for school and wonders where her lunch is, only to have Salem assure her that it's definitely not half-eaten and hidden in a drawer behind him. In English class, Sabrina is surprised to see Mr. Kraft, and he eventually announces that their usual teacher had her baby, so she'll be out with 6 whole weeks of maternity leave, thanks Bill Clinton.
Such a great line.
Honestly, Martin Mull is on fire in this episode. This might be my favorite episode he's been in so far.
We'll talk about it, but yes, it was amazing.
He then says that he's going to lay down some new rules and that there will be a quiz every day, and that for tomorrow they have to read The Waging of War by Heinrich von Germanname. Sabrina points out that they were studying Emily Dickinson, so Kraft shits on Emily Dickinson also, and we're then at lunch, where Sabrina shows Harvey the massive text they are meant to read. Harvey says that at least they only have to read the first 3 chapters before Sabrina points out that the whole 600-plus pages only amounts to 4 chapters. Valerie then arrives with an idiotic complaint about only having vanilla frozen yogurt, so Sabrina stops the cafeteria lady, another great joke, Mrs. Poopy Pants, it's French, to ask her for more variety in their frozen treats.
Excuse me, Mrs. Poopy Pants?
Pipins. It's French.
Oh, well, we were just wondering if it were possible to maybe get some new flavors in the yogurt machine.
There you go. Mocha.
Poopy Pants just tells the teens that they can now have mocha as she empties her mug of coffee into Valerie's yogurt. Sabrina just wonders why they even bother expressing their opinions, as Libby is there just in time to call them all freaks. Okay, Phil. So let's go back.
That's Miss Poupin.
Poopipins.
Poopipins.
That is honestly, like, I realize it's like the most childish joke in the world. I do love it, just in part because of the way Melissa Joan Hart says Mrs. Poopy Pants.
Miss Poopipins.
It's like, it's so in her mind, like that's what her name is, that it's so mundane to call her that I'm just going to, stop it. Poopy Pants over here. It's
Hey,
like,
Poopy Pants.
Come on, Sabrina. Come on. Okay. So let's go back to the breakfast scene and the whole conversation about land lovers. One, that's a terrible name for jeans.
Yes.
Why would you ever name them that? Also, Phil.
Yes.
I'm glad you've already brought it up several times. Just use magic. Hilda is an idiot.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, here's the thing. I used to have these wonderful pair of jeans. Let me think. How could I get these jeans? Oh, hey, guess what? I have hundreds of years of magical knowledge. Maybe I'll just make them appear.
Or I know what a time ball is and I'll make one.
But no, see, Al, that would be too easy. So now they have to take us on a 5-minute excursion to explain what a time ball is.
I did love the fact that, literally in my notes, the first thing I wrote was, she's been a witch for centuries and somehow can't figure out how magic would possibly remedy her lack of poorly named jeans.
I mean, I like that Salem is trying to lick the jam off her knife, and, Sabrina says, have some self-respect, and he starts to cry.
I did also think that this episode, but that scene is indicative of it, is a beautifully encapsulating episode of why Nick Bakay is so fantastic as a voice actor. There is so much passion when he's begging for food at breakfast. It's incredible.
Please, one little egg, a scrap of sausage, the crumbs from your toast. Oh.
No, it's not healthy for a cat to be overweight. We're making you diet because we care about you.
Let me just lick the jam off your knife.
I'll find some self-respect.
Yeah, you could definitely tell the caliber of actor that he is, even just as a voice actor.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that just as a voice actor, but it's probably the hardest thing you could do, because you have to basically inject that emotion into the character
solely through talking.
Exactly, solely through talking. Exactly.
I thought you were going to say, as a voice actor, you were a voice actor in that you star on Archer.
No, that is not me. Just to let you know, everybody.
Nick Bakay, voice actor to voice actor. You're doing a great job.
Call me sometime, buddy.
I also wrote, were bell bottoms really big in 97? I guess Dharma and Greg debuted that year, so maybe they had a resurgence.
So yes, there was. I could tell you because I was alive back then and I was in high school at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not to the level of 70s and 60s bell bottoms,
mm-hmm.
but I mean, there was a phase of bell bottomness for girls, at least, that I could remember.
I can dig it. Sorry, I'm getting into my Quizmaster delivery.
Oh my gosh.
We'll get there. One last thing that we did talk about, Martin Mull. He is fantastic in that scene when he comes in. The whole thanks a lot, Bill Clinton thing, I think is hilarious because he's bemoaning the fact that this woman only gets a whole 6 weeks with her baby.
Your English teacher, Mrs. Riley, had her baby last night, so she will be on maternity leave for the next 6 weeks. Thank you, Bill Clinton. Anyway, I will be taking over the class for her while she breastfeeds and bonds.
Also, the way that he says, bonds, while she spends some time with her baby and bonds.
Right. Well, exactly. You can listen to the the sarcastic comment that he's saying there, and you understand that he's perturbed with the whole situation, that she's going to get 6 weeks off so they can bond.
It's delicious. I love that delivery. Anything else you want to touch on here?
Yeah, what did you think about Sabrina and what she was wearing? that copper colored like gold flower.
It is not. It's not great. It is like it's a very orange with like the top is very tight to the body, long sleeve shirt, but it's like a tinfoil looking kind of thing.
Yeah, it was like a foil looking thing, and it was. It
has leaves on it also, I think.
Yeah, it was like flowers or some kind of gold flowers, and then she has like this maroon like skirt with it.
Yeah,
I don't know. I was not a fan.
It's a mistake. It doesn't look good. I thought that when we see her and Valerie talking and walking down the hall a little bit later, it struck me just how much better Valerie looked in that scene than she did, like in terms of outfit. Oh, yeah. But yeah, it was a swing and a miss, I think.
I did like the whole interaction with Miss Poupin because it was funny because they're like, oh, we need more flavored yogurts, and she's like, here's mocha, and she just like pours her coffee into it. Which honestly, I laughed at.
The most first world problem I've ever heard. We only get vanilla frozen yogurt.
You're lucky you get anything.
This is a public high school. You're lucky there's not like a rat teaching you algebra. My God. Okay. In class, as the bell rings, Mrs. Quick, who we haven't seen in the longest goddamn time, reminds the kids to visit the college fair, adding that anyone can have a fulfilling career, permitting that they're not a fucking imbecile. We then see Valerie telling Sabrina that she should do a follow-up article on the college fair for the school newspaper, and Sabrina says that Valerie's doing a great job as editor, and she seems really confident in the role. I can never say Valerie. It's one of those fucking names. Val. I have to start writing Val in my notes.
Valerie.
I bit my tongue.
Valerie. I heard last week, Al. I heard.
Embarrassing. I heard, I said I went to the dentist a couple of days ago, so I'm going to blame it on that. Val just tells Sabrina to please tell that to her mom. Later at the college fair, we see Mrs. Quick introducing Sabrina to a representative from Franklin and Lee. And while he starts selling Sabrina on the school, she just seems impressed by the brick buildings in the brochure. They chat for a while, and he says that he thinks she might be Franklin and Lee material for some reason, and gives her a packet to take home, but she just asks for a bumper sticker instead.
Franklin Lee delivers a fine education and turns out leaders.
Being a leader sounds good.
Why don't you take home one of our packets? I think you might be Franklin Lee material.
Cool. If you really mean that, can I have the bumper sticker?
At home that night, Salem recounts his pathetic new diet, which for some reason includes corn for a cat, before beginning to ask Sabrina for some food, only to have her turn him down as she knows that he ate her lip balm. Hilda and Zelda then enter, with Hilda still complaining about her loss of land lovers, so Zelda zaps in a literal broken record to make a point. They notice that Sabrina's reading Heinrich von Germaname's book, and Hilda gives us a little background that he was a real loser, adding that when they went out on dates, he would never pick up a check. An uninterested quizmaster then walks in through the linen closet, and he greets Sabrina, but quickly returns to the conversation he's having with his landlord on his phone, eventually explaining to her that he has an other realm mouse in his apartment, a 275-pound mouse.
I'm trying to get my landlord.
You have a landlord?
What did you think? I lived in a magic lamp?
Actually, I did. So what's up?
Got a mouse in my apartment.
Well, why don't you just catch it and set it free outside?
Oh, it's another realm mouse. Try 275 pounds.
I'd like to see its exercise wheel.
He tells her that her quiz for today is to make something from the home supplement to her magic book, brewing and concocting with 2 hot tamales. She then arrives at the laptop and, flipping through the cookbook, decides to make a time ball, as the tamales tell her that you don't eat it, idiot, you hold it, and your surroundings become whatever decade you think of. We then get a quick cutaway to the quizmaster yelling at his landlord. I thought pretty comedically, actually. I think it's Alamy Ballard's maybe most funny scene that he has in a while, just yelling at his landlord on the phone. But we then come back and we see Sabrina showing off her finished time ball, which we find out was done properly because it smells like sardines. She then decides to go get Hilda's jeans, and we are in a flash transferred back to the 1960s, where we get a very hippie dress-up to all the sets. Looks really very nice. And an afro-clad quizmaster walks in, complimenting her on the time ball, before asking her if she has a fro pick. And that's where we'll pause here, Phil. Let's go back.
Brother, where's my throat pick at?
My God. I was going to go back to Franklin and Lee, but I just want to touch on the two hot tamales.
Yes.
They were actually Food Network stars of the time period.
Were they really?
They were. They had a show that was called like something and something with the two hot tamales. The thing that really irritates me about it is that they spell two hot tamales with two O's. So it's not TWO, the number two hot tamales. It's that they're too hot.
Jeez.
But yes, also I thought they had two unhot 90s haircuts. If you looked at them, not looking great for the time period or any period. But
I almost thought they looked like the SNL characters with the sewing machine and you know what I'm talking about?
I don't think I do.
Oh God, what is that? I don't know. In the 90s, there was this whole thing where with the call-in show. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, the one with yeah, I do. Actually, that might have been a take off of them. I wouldn't be surprised. It was the one with the sweaty balls, right?
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah.
Oh God, the Guys Nuts one. Remember?
Yeah.
Yeah, Guys Nuts.
Yeah, but yeah. Apparently,
I'm old. I don't remember any of this shit.
Phil, tell us some stories about Abraham Lincoln. What was he like?
Let me tell you about the time. Oh, honest Abe. He had a shovel and.
But by the way, listener, whenever Phil says 97, he means 1897.
Yes, 1697.
Man, that Christopher Columbus had some wild ideas.
That son of a bitch.
Let's go back to Franklin and Lee, Phil. Let's talk about that.
Oh, the great Franklin and Lee.
Yeah,
so
not real, by the way.
Never heard of that college before, but the recruiter said it's one of the oldest colleges in America where they turn out leaders.
It seems so weird that they would name a school after like Benjamin Franklin and Robert E. Lee. Like,
see, this is where if I were Sabrina, I'd be like, name me one leader that came from Franklin Lee.
Maybe you've never heard of Mr. Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich.
I'm pretty sure he did not go to Franklin Lee.
The funny thing is, I actually wrote here, the guy from Franklin and Lee, discount Paul Ryan. He looked
like a guy who just came off the set of Baywatch. Like most of those guys in that time period look like. He looked like a washed up Baywatch actor.
One of the things I love is like when they go back into the 60s and they go to the 60s like college fair, he's got the exact same haircut, like his hair doesn't change.
Exact same. Nothing has changed. Like hi. Amazing. You literally went back 30 years in time, and I am absolutely the same. Nothing has changed.
I also love the fact that he really starts like giving her the hard sell to come to Franklin and Lee. She could not be less interested.
So okay, so go ahead. Yes, yeah. She's like, oh, Franklin Lee. Like, oh, yeah.
He asks if she's thinking about going, and she just like smiles and nods because she doesn't want to have to say no.
Well, yeah, because freaking Miss Quick's like, oh, I want you to meet one of my star pupils. And like, I'd have been like, who wants to go to Franklin Lee, Miss Quick? I mean, just because you went there, probably.
I mean, Harvard's right there.
I mean, yeah, exactly. Yale, MIT. I mean, come on. You have all these wonderful choices in the Boston area.
That's true. Or Boston College, where she'll eventually end up. The great Boston College.
Come on. I mean, the only people I could think of that went to Boston College is Howard Stern.
Yes.
I mean, still, it's Howard Stern, but you know.
Sabrina's reaching real high, Phil.
I mean, how many people do you know that went to Boston College? I know 0.
Since you told me, 1.
Well, Howard Stern, but like that I personally know. I know 0 that went there.
Of course not. What'd you have here, Phil?
I thought it was kind of funny. I don't know if you kind of noticed it. Did you see the names of the other schools?
I did not pick up on the names of the other schools.
Okay, so I first thought like I had like a hilarious school name, but then I just saw it was something else. There was one like in the shot. I want to say it almost looked like it said Carnitas, like Carnitas University, but it didn't. It was like something else that looked like Carnitas, but it wasn't. And I was like, is this like where they get like the leaders for Chipotle?
Yes.
Like they all go to Carnitas University?
E. coli University is too hard to get into.
A couple other things that I kind of saw. So like you talked about, like, you know, Hilda had dated, you know, a General
von German name?
Well, it's von Schleck, but yes,
yeah,
von German name.
Not a real person, by the way.
No. And then the Quizmaster. Okay, so then the Quizmaster. So, all right. For those of you who are just tuning in, I am a child of the 80s, and 97, where this was going on, I was in high school. Okay. Now in 1997, I was like one of the first kids to have a cell phone because I actually had a job and saved up for it and bought it. I did not, the one thing I've always wanted was a Motorola StarTAC, which the Quizmaster had, that SOD.
He sure does. I'm looking at it right now.
And I'm like, you son of a bitch. So I couldn't afford it. I had an Ericsson GH388, which for those of you who don't know what that is, it's basically like not very cool. Not cool. It was no StarTAC. I'll tell you that.
This was like the gray candy bar one, right?
Yeah. So this is like the black one. Yeah, like candy bar style. It was
everybody
not
was
cool.
laughing at him.
No, actually, everybody was cool because everybody thought I was cool as shit because nobody had a cell phone. Like this was before like your parents would buy you a cell phone. Like nobody bought. Like parents said you'd have a cell phone, and I had a cell phone.
I've got to tell you, I'm so fucking impressed that you're able to just like rattle off these numeric names. Like first of all, remembering Sony Ericsson was a thing is impressive, but like just being able to like rail off like names with like 15 digits in it is pretty fucking stunning 20 years later.
I appreciate that. But then like the thing I really wanted later on was the Nokia 5190, which I never got.
Which one was that?
But that was the one that you played Snake on, and like everybody had the Nokia, and I had the Ericsson GH388. So
now you can get the Nokia banana phone for like $100 because they're remaking them.
$100, you say, huh?
Pretty much, and they come in classic Matrix black or yellow.
Wow.
Yes.
Why would you get it in yellow though?
It actually looks pretty good in yellow. Like,
so like the one I always thought was the coolest one was like the Nokia, like that was in the Matrix.
Yeah, this is that.
Right, but that was in silver. That was a silver one.
Yeah, they have one that's like supposed to be that, but I think it's just black. But then they have like the really garish, like super bright yellow one.
Yeah, that's trash. But in any case, I was like, when I saw him with the StarTAC, I was like, you son of a bitch!
Yeah,
I never got one.
Quizmastering pays pretty well, Phil.
I guess so, because like he has an apartment, and then it was funny because Sabrina was like, I thought you just lived in a lamp.
Yeah, which honestly would not be beyond the realm of plausibility.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, you would imagine he's like a, Quizmaster. Where else are you going to be? Did you see what he was wearing though?
I was gonna say he's got a really nice green, white, and black like long sleeve polo going on. That's super big, but what are you gonna do?
Well, here's the thing. Okay, if you noticed, it's a Boss polo.
I didn't know what that logo was.
But they couldn't show the Boss logo, so they put like black tape around it to cover the logo. But it was like a strand of electric black tape.
I'm looking at it right now.
The jacket looked terrible, or the shirt looked terrible, because it literally looked like a NASCAR. It literally looked like they took the skin of a NASCAR and made a shirt out of it.
This is actually one of his better looks, to be perfectly honest. Like he looks like an actual human being in 1997.
Oh yeah, I mean, trust me, he looks of the time period. Like if he was walking down the street with his StarTAC, he would be the fucking cat's meow. Like every fucking chick would be on the Quizmaster right now.
Amazing. You mentioned carnitas. Let's go from one cooking thing to another. The time ball, Phil. I I realized
that for some reason is going to smell like sardines when it's done. Why does it smell like sardines?
I'm glad you asked, because I realized rewatching it that there's actually a shot where you can see the recipe for the time ball, Phil.
Oh, really? Well, Al,
Yes.
go ahead and tell us.
And now you would expect that maybe the Sabrina Teenage Witch staff would put some like fun, kind of like other realm ingredients on there so that it would be
Right.
like, one, not easy to recreate, and two, somewhat more like magical and otherworldly. No, it's like 6 ingredients or 7 ingredients, and they are all available at your local like Stop and Shop.
Oh, shit. So you're telling me we're able to do time travel with like...
I know, right? How no one has ever put this together. Like, it sounds disgusting, but we can go back in time. Okay, so time ball. 1 large onion.
Okay.
2 large garlic cloves.
Okay.
Half a bunch of thyme. 3/4 pound of halibut.
Okay.
1/4 cup of sardines.
Okay.
2 tablespoons of lemon juice. Sorry, 2 tablespoons of lime juice, and 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Now, instructions here very small. Heat the olive oil in a large heavy pot over low heat. Add the onions and the garlic and cook about 5 minutes. Stir in the sardines and the halibut together with the thyme and cook for 2 minutes. So in like 7 minutes, we can go back in time.
Wow. Or have a very well marinated fish dish, it sounds like.
And it's honestly, it does sound disgusting. Like halibut and sardines.
But okay, so here you just gave us the recipe, correct?
Mm-hmm.
None of it would make that ball.
I'm glad you pointed this out. That thing looks like just like if you went under like classroom desks and scraped all the gum and like formed it into a ball.
Okay, I don't know if you're like there used to be like those art erasers that you would get.
Yes.
Do you remember? You know what I'm talking about? Like you would pound them into like a little ball. That's what it looked like to me.
It's so weird. Like you'd expect them to be like to make something that looks good on camera, but it just looks like a hairball or something that Salem literally coughed up, which makes perfect sense why he's attracted to it a little later on.
Yeah, well, we'll see that definitely later on. So like you said, she basically goes back into time and just is like, well, I'm gonna go get her. Like her whole thing is like, well, I'm gonna go get her jeans now.
Yep.
Like, okay, so you've literally went back into time so you can just go get her jeans.
Oh, this is only the beginning of like the time ball insanity. I didn't mention it off the bat, but like I talked about it last episode. This episode was the first episode in the Time Chasers storyline over this course of over this night on TGIF. By the way, I also didn't add it, but this first aired November 7th, 1997, 8.5 rating, and the 52nd most viewed piece of television that given week. But yeah, so the idea was we can advertise the Time Chasers where each TGIF show goes back to a different decade because Salem crosses over to all of the shows and sends them back into a different decade. So you need some sort of time travel-y storyline. Thus we get the time ball. So when you go back into the 60s, there's a lot of ridiculousness with this time ball magic, but I thought they did a fantastic job of hippieing up the sets on Sabrina. Like, a lot of them are really big sets. Like, the kitchen has a lot of detail in it when they go back into the 60s. The living room has, like, a fuck ton of detail. Like, they, like, drown that shit in, like, 60s regalia. And even Sabrina's room is really nicely decorated. So I did appreciate that they put a lot of effort into it. And for some reason, apparently in the 60s, the aunties have a, like, hand statue where the hand is, like, giving a peace sign.
Peace and love.
And also 50 million beaded curtains. Beaded curtains everywhere. Yeah. Like, just one last thing. You touched on the fro pick joke, or I think you had something to say about it.
Yeah.
I think that joke and Sabrina saying totally groovy all the time are indicative of the level of comedy that this crossover will, like, carry forth. Like, don't expect really incredible writing. Expect us to be like, oh boy, I wonder what President Nixon is up to. Like,
yeah, like let's literally add what what kids know about the 60s and like nothing else. And then we'll probably throw in like a little something for you to be like, oh really? That really happened?
Yeah. And overshadow a lot of the 60s actually, but we'll get there.
Like, I don't know. It was, like you said, it was just like, oh, I'll just say the fro pick.
Yeah.
Don't you, all kids know the fro pick is from the 60s.
All kids also know the Mod Squad.
I got plenty to talk about the Mod Squad. Go ahead.
Okay, Sabrina is then seen in a 60s shop finding Hilda's jeans and going to pay for them, but not barter for them, which the stupid sales lady wants to do with some poetry. She's not getting any poetry. Take some money. Sabrina then returns back to the 90s and surprises Hilda with her pants, explaining that she used the time ball, leading Zelda to note that that's why they were in the 60s a minute ago. Apparently, Phil, only witches notice when a time ball is used, and mortals just go along with it.
Oh yeah, that makes absolute sense.
Such insanity. We'll cover it in a second. The aunties note that it was fun drinking tab again, and when Sabrina goes to check if there's more in the magical cabinet, they find Salem there with a can of chili, unable to eat it. Apparently, they just keep their regular chili in the magic cabinet.
How sad is this?
Darn canned chili. Here's my Christmas list. Can opener.
But you wouldn't be able to use a can opener.
To hit you with.
Later that night, Harvey and Sabrina compare their progress on the German book over the phone, and eventually Sabrina realizes that Harvey is an idiot because he's only on page, I believe, 19.
That is correct.
So she sends him to go read and hangs up, reminding him, as Phil loves, to turn off that great network ESPN in a nice bit of synergy with an ABC property.
Go figure.
We then see Salem running around upstairs, very hungry, before sniffing sardines, coming upon the time ball, and as Sabrina sleeps, he eats it. He then complains about his stomach aching before going to watch some TV downstairs to relax, eventually settling on an episode of The Mod Squad, part of a 60s marathon, and falling asleep to Peggy Lipton, something a lot of us wish we could do. Sabrina's alarm then goes off, and she awakes in a much cooler 60s bedroom, eventually realizing when she opens her closet and sees a lot of like dashikis and very colorful patterned dresses. She then discovers that the time ball is missing, and as a sitar clangs, Melissa Joan Hart just gives us a bummer.
Where's my time ball? Oh no. Bummer.
Okay, Phil.
Yes, sir.
Let's discuss the magic of the time ball. So, whenever a witch uses a time ball, all other witches apparently experience that change.
Yeah, but us humans, we just go with it.
Right, but can you imagine how irritating it would be if we were all witches and I used a time ball to go back to like 1941 and like everyone else had to go back to 1941 because I used it?
Well, here's the thing that makes no sense, okay? So, like, they say all witches, right? They said all witches.
They said only witches can realize when it's happening.
So let's say you're in, I don't know, you're in Westbridge and I'm in New York City and I have my own time ball and you have a time ball. So which witches would be at your time and which witches would be in my time?
Yes, absolutely true. I want to know like what kind of coverage this time ball has.
Yeah, I mean, is it like within like the immediate area, which would make sense? Mm-hmm. You know, like all the witches within 100 miles are
outside of
60s.
City limits.
Yeah, but then it made no sense.
No,
like
the fact of the matter is nobody put this much thought into the time ball, and that's a shame.
Well, yeah, I mean, as you could tell in a lot of these things, they don't really put a lot of thought into it. They just kind of roll with it, and then it's like this can easily be explained out. Like,
the other thing is, if you lose a time ball, can you not just make another time ball and go back to the present day?
Well, yeah, I guess. But and then the other thing that I want to touch on, but I don't want to get too far ahead, is so now if another witch, well, Salem is no longer a witch, right? Because they've put him. So why are they traveling with him eating it?
I guess that it's inside of him, as we find out later. So, like, it still has its effects because he's technically holding it. So when he thinks of the 60s in watching the Mod Squad, they're sent back to the 60s. And later on, when he goes to different shows, he goes back to those different decades.
He's been put into jail, and he's been turned into a pet. So his powers have been taken away.
Right, but it's not. He doesn't have magic, but it's in him. He's technically still like of witch birth, I guess you could say. So, like, he's technically still a witch.
I know, but you're better explaining it than they are.
The real question is, the real answer is, never mind that. Look at Quizmaster and his big funny afro.
Yes. Yes. Where's this fro pick? Oh, silly. I did like the Mod Squad reference, because that was, one of my favorite shows.
I did Google Peggy Lipton, and 1, fuck, she was pretty.
Yes.
And 2, I didn't realize that 1, she was married to Quincy Jones, and then she was also Rashida Jones's mother.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah. How about that, huh?
You taught me something today.
That's right. Also, I taught you how to make a time ball with onions, halibut, and sardines. Delicious.
Still sounds
holidays.
Disgusting. I'm sorry.
It's not. Honestly, I kind of want to make it just to be like, this is what the thing is. I don't have to eat it. I just have to like make it and hold it.
It's, halibut? Like, really?
And also, like, halibut, would you have to like grind it to then make it into like a ball? You know what I mean? With
the thing I don't get is like, why would you use like you said, like magical ingredients, like you have to have the tail of this, or
a quarter cup of unicorn milk, and like,
like the tip of a unicorn, or it's like, okay, it makes sense. No, it's like, you'll need 2% milk and some sardines and halibut and an onion, and you could do it.
Go down to the AMP, go to aisle 6, you'll get your time ball.
That's right. There's no more wall bounds, is there?
Yeah, that's true.
When I was a kid, there used to be a wall bounds.
When you were a kid, you had to go down to the trading post and like give like the skins off the backs of like elks and stuff for firewood. Anyway, I do love more great Nick Bakay delivery here, and just the way he says Peggy Lipton every time is like the sultriest thing. Peggy Lipton.
Peggy Lipton.
Also, is it just me, or is Sabrina's room way cooler in the 60s than it is in the 90s?
No, but what the hell is with her? Like, freaking, like, I don't know any girl in the 90s who went to bed in, like, a freaking, like, old-timey pajamas. Yeah, we've talked about it before, but she does wear, like a full like nightgown from the time period when Phil was born in the 1840s. I'm kidding. I'm gonna let it go eventually. I mean, like, pretty much. I mean, it's like, geez. Yeah. I'm like, what is this whole like getup? Like, I've never seen a girl like have that getup ever. She looks like Wendy in Peter Pan. Pretty much. It's probably for the right time period. Like, the 1800s. What it was. Okay, so Sabrina comes downstairs still in the 60s, seeing that her aunties are all dressed in their 60s get-ups and are eating wheat germ for breakfast. And she tells them that something is wrong. Hilda gives her some hippie shit talk about something only being wrong if you think it's wrong, before Hilda compliments her on playing with the time ball. Sabrina says it's missing, so we then cut to the Spellman searching Sabrina's room, as she says that if they can't find it, they'll be stuck in the 60s forever. Just make another one, you fucking idiot. Or just freaking use magic to get out of this problem. Or some other sort of magic. I'm sure there's more. I'm pretty sure there's a reversal spell for this time ball. I'm pretty sure. Check your handbook. There you go. Zelda creeps Sabrina out by noting that the only thing that's forever is their love for her. Salem then runs into the laundry room, jumps into a basket of freshly dried towels, and sets about napping, hoping for some more Peggy Lipton dreams. Peggy Lipton. Peggy Lipton. I know what I'll be dreaming about later.
The family then comes downstairs as Hilda tells Sabrina that she has to get to school or, quote, the man will lay a trip on her. Before Sabrina begs her to stop talking that way. She then tells them to find the time ball, and Zelda says that they will fill the house with positive vibes, but Sabrina also does add that looking is probably also beneficial. Sabrina then arrives in Westbridge circa 1967, getting a flower from Discount Archie, before greeting Valerie, who is getting her hem measured by a teacher. Sabrina asks why she doesn't just wear pants, and Valerie, see, happening again. Val laughs off the idea of girls wearing pants in school, you crazy diamond.
Valerie.
Leave me alone. These notes are very long and complicated. 1967 Harvey then walks up with dramatically better hair and announces that he just bought a 63 VW bus, and Sabrina is shocked that that's a good thing. Val and him then exchange some 60s talk about painting the VW bus, leading Valerie, see, can't do it, to say that he's blowing her mind, and Sabrina to add that she shouldn't make a mess. And I thought, a really fun line.
But it is so out of sight.
Are you gonna paint it?
You bet. Total psychedelic. Peter Max to the max.
You're blowing my mind. Well, don't make a mess.
Sabrina goes on to make a phone call, only to discover that it's a payphone that has a dial. So how the fuck is she going to use this thing? She calls home eventually, and we see that Hilda found her 12-string, eventually answering the phone. The aunties haven't found the time ball yet. Zelda explains that she got busy in her macrame, but they both sound like they were just fucking smoking a bunch of fucking pot right before they answered the phone.
Oh, yeah.
Sabrina tells them to look as it rolls, it's round, it could be anywhere, but Hilda thinks that's just haiku. Sabrina then hears the bell ring and starts heading to class, but sees that no one else in the hallway is even moving. She asks them if they heard the bell, and Archie tells her that that bell is the man's bell. Incredibly sassily. Like, he's sassy as fuck.
Didn't you guys hear the bell?
That bell is the man's bell.
She just makes sure that they actually did hear the bell. Okay, Phil. I love all the Spellman's 60s outfits. I think they all look really fun and great and like colorful and considered. I especially love Sabrina's poncho and Hilda's furry coat. What did you think?
I mean, I tend to agree with you. I mean, it literally looks like they went to Woodstock and just ripped clothes off of people's backs and put them on these characters.
It is great. I think they all also have really nice 60s hair. I mean, some of them are obviously wigs, but I think they all look really good. Also, I added here that I would definitely wear that flowery shirt Archie is wearing.
Oh, probably.
Definitely from the Al collection.
I did like Valerie's whole like getting measured her skirt and then like rolling up her skirt.
I did think that was a nice little touch. They're just
she's
talking.
She's a little rebel, isn't she?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
She's the secret.
Sassy.
She's the secret heroine of this podcast and this show.
This podcast. She's a little sassy little one, isn't she?
She is, and Lindsay Sloan, gorgeous as ever.
What I don't get though was with Harvey. Like Harvey's like all excited that he just bought this like 63 bus, and it's 1967, so it's like a 4-year-old like car.
Yeah.
Like how does a high school kid afford that?
I mean, cars are probably
even in the 60s.
Yeah. I mean, his father was probably the termite king in the 60s also. So, and we all know how big a termite epidemic there was in 1967. So he was probably making cash hand over fist.
We all know he is the termite prince.
That's right. But honestly, his hair looks fucking amazing. Like, I didn't even put together that it looked that he was wearing a wig or anything initially. I just looked at Harvey and was like, God, he looks really good. What's going on? I'm like, oh, I see. I get it.
Oh.
They fixed one of history's greatest atrocities.
But yeah, it was kind of funny because, like you said, the budget Archie was like, hey, man, that's the man's bell.
He also just gives her a flower when she walks in and says peace. It's like, The fuck?
Because it's the 60s, man. That's how it was,
Right. Everyone had free flowers to give.
Free flowers to give and, peace and love. And it's all great.
We're going to talk about Sabrina's adoration for the 60s in a second. But one thing I wanted to note here, like I said before, the aunts are clearly high as fuck. Like, they're easily forgetful and distracted. We later see them eating fondue in the middle of the day. They're not fooling anybody.
I'll tell you what, there must have been some big freaking, bowls of something going on over there because it was ridiculous.
Yeah,
the one scene when she calls to the house, it's just like they're totally spaced out.
They are lit, to use a phrase that I probably shouldn't, even though I'm only 25. In class, Harvey enters, seeing Sabrina stressing about the test on the waging of war, so he just begins an idiotic chant of "Stop the war." Oddly enough, I dictate these notes, so sometimes there's like some weird things written here, but I wrote Mr. Kraft Ben & Jerry's enters, but I think that kind of works because he is definitely like Ben & Jerry's Mr. Kraft here.
I mean, it did look like something out of Ben & Jerry's.
Anyway, Mr. Kraft enters, winning this episode of Sabrina the Teenage Witch in his hippie attire, complete with brown bell bottoms and a wonderful long wig.
Stop the war! Stop the war! Absolutely, right on!
Yeah. Mr. Kraft?
Power to the people!
Yeah! I have a question about the quiz today.
A quiz? No. A quiz can only test you on what you've been told, not who you are.
So does that mean it's open book?
He says that he's going to take the class outside today so they can continue their discussion about America becoming a police state. And when Sabrina asks if this is an English class or not, he just says that this is a life class, as is life. He then decides that sounds like a song, so they should start singing, and ask for suggestions. So Harvey suggests Kumbaya, which they begin singing as they all start swaying and eventually walk out of the classroom still singing. Back at the house, we get maybe the other greatest bit of this episode, in my opinion. We see Salem saying Peggy Lipton in his sleep, adding the incredible line, "No, Peggy, don't fall down," before we get a cutaway to his dream, where we see Harvey, Quizmaster, Sabrina, and Salem all in an alley as members of the Mod Squad, stopping a criminal. I fucking love this scene.
I totally agree with you. Probably the best thing in the whole show.
Peggy Lipton. Peggy, don't fall down. Freeze, sucker! Peggy.
Sabrina then comes into the 60s cafeteria, finding that the students and Mrs. Quick are having a sit-in. No, not to stop the Vietnam War, silly, but to protest the lack of vegetarian options. Mrs. Quick says that they will not eat their female friends, and Sabrina decides to join them as Harvey gives her another fake flower. These were all like synthetic flowers, which really kind of irritated me because it was the 60s and that's supposed to be all lovey-dovey, but like, here's your plastic posy. They then begin chanting "No beef," and 60s lunch lady Poopy Pants then comes in with a megaphone, announcing that in response to their minutes-long protest, the cafeteria will now serve vegetarian options, including meatless sloppy joes. Miss Quick then also adds her hat to great moments in this episode when she says maybe the greatest line of the episode, saying Poopy Pants is a sexist pig for not naming them Sloppy Sues.
I have a message here from the principal. Starting tomorrow, the cafeteria will serve vegetarian meatloaf, fish sticks, and meatless sloppy joes. I also have a message from your parents. Get off the floor!
Sloppy Joes, how about Sloppy Sue's, sexist pig?
Oh, shave your legs.
Libby then walks by, noting that no one is going to want to marry a radical, and the group begins booing her, while she says that social climbing is a grand tradition that will never die, and calls them freaks. Harvey says that they are all freaks and begins chanting freak power along with Valerie and the groups assembled. I think I nailed Valerie there.
It was pretty good.
Thank you. So Libby then just walks off angrily, and we go back to the Spellman house where we see the aunties are meditating, and Zelda says she's hearing bells, believing that she's hit Nirvana, but never mind, it's the phone. Did you catch my Nirvana joke there, Phil?
Yep.
Thank you. As long as you understood it, that's all that counts. Laughter is strictly unnecessary.
I mean, I could have done the laugh track. You could insert laugh track here.
I was going to say, it's too much editing for me.
No, I wasn't going to really do it. I was going to be your laugh track for you.
Thank God. If you could also like recreate these Sabrina clips I'm throwing to, you'll save me a lot more editing. Phil, do the Mod Squad one.
Freeze, sucker!
There it is.
That was a great job.
I know, nailed it. Anyway, Sabrina's calling, and she tells them not to worry about finding the time ball because aside from a few people smelling, the 60s is excellent. This era rocks. Okay. I want to start there, actually, Phil. So Sabrina is in love with 1967. 1967 rocks, right?
It does.
I noticed in her classroom that there was only one black student in the room. And this reminded me about the issues that Boston and Massachusetts had with school integration, shockingly, in the 1960s. So I'm just going to read this little clip from, this little snippet from a Wikipedia article about school integration in Massachusetts in the 60s. The Racial Imbalance Act of 1965 made the segregation of public schools illegal in Massachusetts. An initial report in 1965 revealed that 55 schools in Massachusetts were racially imbalanced, 44 of which were in the city of Boston. Years later, in 1972, the NAACP had to sue because of a lack of integration. So, I guess Sabrina doesn't mind all of the other issues going on in the 60s, as long as, someone makes Libby angry and she storms off.
I thought you were going to say, including like 20 schools in the Westbridge area.
That wouldn't surprise me either. Like judging by the presentation of African American students in Westbridge, it hasn't really gotten much better until the 90s.
I mean, even even in the later seasons, I don't remember a lot of
No, eventually Dreama comes in, but that's about it.
That's about it.
It's just ridiculous. Like, she's a high school student. I mean, she's not like super knowledgeable about the world and everything, but you would figure in history class they would have covered like the Vietnam War and the struggle for voting rights of African Americans and all the other issues in the 60s that made it not such a great time to live for a lot of people. But she's like in her bliss until someone tells her she can't go to a school.
That's about right. You got to remember, it's Sabrina, the most self-centered person that we know.
Stunningly so. Phil, what did you think of Martin Mull's performance as hippie Mr. Kraft?
I think it was actually hilarious because it was so opposite of his usual self.
Yep.
I thought it was great.
I think the prior scene we talked about also does a great job of like setting up that juxtaposition where he's like he hates maternity leave, but now he's like stop the war and police state America.
But what the irony is in this, if you kind of think about it, a lot of those people that were the hippies in the 60s, in later on in the 90s when they were able to become into power, they were the more unhippie-ish people.
Sure.
So it's kind of the counterbalance there that you also saw in history.
Absolutely. I mean, look at Martin Mull specifically. Like, he's probably the only cast member who lived through the 60s and can remember it, like, well. I mean, Zelda and Hilda, Beth Broderick and Caroline Ray were alive, but they were, like, kids. Martin Mull was, like, 24 in 1967. So he was definitely in this, like, time period experiencing all this. So he would know better than anybody. And I think he does a fantastic job in the delivery. I do love when he tells Harvey that he's beautiful, when Harvey suggests kumbaya. Every line delivery by Martin Mull in this episode is astoundingly good.
Life is a life glass. Huh? It's like a song. In fact, sing with me, everybody. What should we sing?
Kumbaya.
Kumbaya. You're beautiful, Harvey. Okay.
Like you were pointing out before, the whole Mod Squad scene, I think was spectacular. I think it was probably the best part of this episode.
I just love that they bothered to do it and build that set for such an innocuous cutaway. If they didn't do that at all, it would have no bearings on this episode at all. But the fact that they bothered to get those costumes, build that set, clear that Mod Squad music, and I mean it was an ABC show, so it was easy for them to do. But I just love that they put that much effort into that scene. It's one of my favorite things that's ever happened so far on this podcast. I just had one other note here. I really don't love how this episode kind of takes the idea of people protesting to stop the Vietnam War, which was a really serious and oftentimes bloody period of unease in America, and tries to turn it into reductive, lazy comedy. And it's oh, what? Sabrina said war. Everybody chant stop the war, because that's what the 60s were about, stopping some vague war.
Well, you can also kind of talk about that in the whole protest, protest, when they were protesting for more vegetarian options.
I'm actually glad you brought that up, but go ahead.
I mean, it's completely pointless. I don't think, I wasn't there, so I can't really, as old as I am, Al, I wasn't in the 60s.
Stunning.
But
were you asleep for a decade?
I was Rumpelstiltskin. That's right. But no, I would imagine that the struggles that they went through for social justice, or to try to eliminate the injustice, it was not for things as minuscule as more vegan options. Yeah, right.
Martin Luther King was still alive in 1967, and he was not trying to get more vegetarian meals in schools.
Yeah, exactly. He's not getting attacked by dogs because I think we need to put quinoa on this menu.
Do you know how meaningless their protest was, Phil? When we see Lunch Lady Poopy Pants in the 60s, there's a menu on the cafeteria wall behind her. One of the entries is literally something called a vegan sandwich.
So it's already on there.
It's on there, and also they have salad.
It's about right. It's about right, though.
That irritated me just because it's what the scene is about. Don't put that there. It just complicates everything.
Yeah, I mean, put something like, T-bone steak or something. Don't just stick vegetarian lasagna. Damn it.
Extra bloody hot dog. All right, let's get going here. Sabrina is then at College Fair 1967, where she gives Valerie her article on College Week, which Val laughs off because she's not the editor, she's just a girl. Ha 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 ha.
Don't ask me, I'm just a girl.
She notes that she's the head of the Future Homemakers of America Club, so a confused Sabrina then goes to speak with the recruiter from Franklin and Lee, as she's filled out their questionnaire. I'm sure this'll go well. He tells her to take it over to the Sarah Lawrence booth, which I thought was a hilarious little joke.
I filled out the questionnaire.
How nice for you. Why don't you just take it over to the Sarah Lawrence booth and let me do my job?
I laughed at that too. I'm sorry.
Franklin and Lee is a men's college, and he adds that while she may want to get her MRS, they don't accept girls. Sabrina is stunned at the assertion that she wants a husband, and another great little part, a guy in line behind her literally pushes her out of the way of the Franklin and Lee booth.
Oh yeah, he literally friggin' checks her out of there.
So if you're not picking up the whole women aren't treated equally thing, this guy's just pushing this broad aside.
I mean, the only thing I was waiting for was for him to throw a sweater at her, hey, sew my sweater, bitch, or some shit like that.
Or go get me one of those vegan sandwiches from the cafeteria.
Yeah.
Sabrina then recounts this interaction to Mrs. Quick, who tells her that this happens because men rule the world, and they do it by forcing women into gender-specific stereotypical roles and uncomfortable shoes. Mrs. Quick then suggests they burn their bras in defiance of the patriarchy, but Sabrina tells her that they might be able to get together and torch their undies a little bit later. As she goes off, Mrs. Quick just reminds her that a woman without a man is like a fish without a bicycle. You know what they say about fish without bicycle, Phil?
No, what do they say, Al?
They're real tasty when you put them in a time ball.
Hey, hey-o.
Callback. Harvey then comes up to Sabrina in the halls, jubilant over his new 8-track player. But Sabrina is pissed that this backwards decade is now not great for some reason, as a school won't even speak to her because she's a girl. Harvey says that shit doesn't matter. Who needs college anyway? They'll just stick with their original plan of traveling across country in his bus after they graduate. But she notes that's a shit plan and a shit vacation too. He then says that he throws some more misogynistic stuff at her about not needing school, and so Sabrina just walks off.
What about my future, my career?
You don't need a career. You're my lady. We'll grow our own food. You'll have my children. And someday, if it's not too much of a hassle, I might even marry you.
I'm sorry, I stopped listening after my lady.
In the kitchen, the aunties eat fondue as Sabrina enters, reiterating that they need the time ball, and Salem soon appears as Sabrina picks up the sardine smell, realizing that he ate it. She demands the time ball back, but he explains how eating works and how she's not getting it for a while. Zelda decides that they should try Salem's furball medicine to make him spit it up, which sends the now svelte cat running out his cat door and towards Philadelphia and Boy Meets World, as Sabrina tells the aunts that unless they want a van-born great-nephew named Moonbeam, they'd better go catch him. Phil.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so Sabrina learns that sexism was a thing. Go
figure. I know. How ironic.
I have two problems with this. Go figure. One, this kind of makes it seem like sexism wasn't alive and well in the 90s and even currently. Like, oh yeah, God, did you guys hear about this thing where like in the 60s, women were treated differently because of their gender?
I think I think the level of sexism is a little bit different.
No, sure. It has definitely changed. It is not nearly as like blatant and upfront.
We're talking to the point, we're talking June Cleaver kind of shit,
Right.
This is, I don't know. I think, but yeah, I see what you're saying. Like they're making it sound like it still doesn't exist. Like, sure. Yes, it existed well in the 90s.
And exactly, and especially we'll talk about the ending, the end credit scene where they're just talking about like how the 60s were a tough time for women. Like there aren't issues, so it kind of just feels like it's glazing over the issues currently. But the other thing was, Sabrina is so fucking self-centered, as you noted before. Like she's happy to stay in the 60s with its notorious problems for various kinds of people, as long as she isn't directly affected by any of the issues.
I mean, again, like I said before, it's all about Sabrina. As long as it's, as long as she's getting what she wants, it's all good. But now, the college that she was mildly interested in, now says she can't go there. What? What do you mean I can't go there?
This is bullshit.
Then he sends her ass off to freaking
Sarah
the other
Lawrence.
school. Yeah. I mean, Carnita's U is still looking for you, Sabrina, if you're interested.
They have plenty of...
We need someone who can roll a mean-ass burrito. We just need somebody.
That's right. We need plenty of guac scoopers. Come on. It was also at this point where you kind of start to realize the failing of this episode and kind of this whole Time Chasers story arc as a whole. Like, Sabrina only faces some sort of conflict at like the 18-minute mark of a 22-minute episode.
Yeah, it was... I don't know. It was just the whole... how they try to intertwine all the episodes. It was just, I don't know. I wasn't a big fan.
I did see an article from the New York Daily News from like this date, November 7th, 1997, talking about this upcoming like story arc and just panning the shit out of like this stupid thing that's gonna happen. The reviewer actually did like Sabrina the Teenage Witch because I read his Sabrina the Teenage Witch review, but he even says like, listen, Sabrina the Teenage Witch is great, but Teen Angel and You Wish are two shitty fucking shows.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, we'll probably talk a little bit more about it. But
we will. We'll talk about those other shows that Salem ventures into a little bit after we wrap up here. But yeah, it's just like there's really no conflict in this episode. It's really just more so like, oh my god, look at how different things were in the 60s, and look at all the different outfits Sabrina's wearing now. It's also interesting that you actually mentioned this to me when you watched the episode, that the wrap up that's going to come immediately after this is like, it feels kind of like slapped together and like slapdash and last minute.
Yeah, it's like, oh, we have to put a wrap up together. Oh,
right.
shit.
And that's because we ended up watching the syndicated ending where the only thing that's going to air is this episode of Sabrina. So we need to like wrap it up and say, oh, look, Salem's back. But in the actual Time Chaser story arc, the ending is where Salem goes out the back door and then like I believe he meets up with like some hippies and heads towards Philadelphia in like a hippie bus.
It's probably with Harvey.
Probably with him and Moonbeam and listening to the 8-track and all that. One other thing I had noted here was Harvey says that Sabrina is going to have his children, and maybe if it's not too much a hassle, one day he'll maybe marry her. So I was kind of surprised that ABC let that line air on their TGIF lineup, just like promoting non-married sex, but that also does confirm that they fucking Phil.
I guess.
Yeah.
You know, some freaking kids out of wedlock. It's all good.
That's right. Moonbeam Kinkle. Well, that's a fucking mouthful of a name, isn't it? Okay, so let's wrap up the Sabrina episode, then we can talk about the other episodes of TGIF shows that Salem ventured onto.
Bonus.
As the credits roll, the Spellmans talk about how they're glad that things are back to normal, and Sabrina knows how hard things were for women in the 60s. The aunties then give us some great dialogue about how the 1560s were way worse for women, and they eventually also say that they're glad Salem came home.
I didn't know how difficult the 60s were for women.
You've come a long way in 30 years.
You want to talk about a tough time for women? Try the 1560s. You couldn't own your own hovel, and you had to marry whatever bootblack or wheelwright your family picked for you.
You could spend all day sharpening his axe or cleaning his musket, but you weren't even allowed to kill your own dinner.
Salem asks if he can get out of his litter box already, but Zelda says only after he gives them that time ball back. So he just asks for a magazine as the episode closes. The one note I had here at the ending, Phil, aside from the whole, man, good thing women of the 90s have it real great, was that I always love seeing like these other rooms in the Spellman's house, and I do like that we go back to the laundry room, which I believe the only other time we saw was an episode you were on, which was Jenny's non-dream.
Oh, I'm in both laundry room episodes.
That's right.
Oh, look at me.
Lucky you.
I know. Take that, Chris.
Who's the favorite now?
That's right. I'm the laundry room guy.
Did you have anything else to note here, Phil, as the episode wrapped up?
No, I think I'm good. I think we've said all we could say about this terrible, terrible episode.
I honestly would have loved it more if they just wrapped up with another like Peggy Lipton Mod Squad flashback.
Yeah, it would have been a lot better. Like if he was just like exactly like he had met Peggy Lipton and is like, oh, you're in my dreams, and it was actually Peggy Lipton. But that would make sense.
Isn't it crazy that they got Davy Jones to be on an episode of Sabrina Teenage Witch in season 2, and it's not the one where they go back to the 60s?
Yeah, what is that all about?
I don't know. You're figuring if you're scheduling this stuff out, it's like, well, let's see, 60s icon Davy Jones. Let's put him in this one that has nothing to do with anything besides him just showing up innocuously.
I mean, God, we could write better episodes than this.
We really could.
Hilda and Davy Jones had gone out in the 60s.
Or maybe they bring him back from the 60s and he shows up in the 90s and now he's a recurring character. Book it.
Yeah, exactly. Gosh.
Okay, Phil. So, as I said, from Sabrina Teenage Witch, Salem ventures into Boy Meets World, and I asked you before the show to just, if you could, summarize the Boy Meets World episode that Salem ventures onto, which I believe was called No Guts, No Corey.
That is correct. So, what happens is, Salem basically wanders into the episode with the time ball, and then we're transported back to pre-World War II. And when I say pre-World War II, I mean like 2 days before World War II and the United States entering the war in 1940. So, like I said, Salem shows up. They get transported. Corey, Sean, Alan, and Jack all volunteer to join the army and go fight in Europe. Eric attempts to join, but is denied because he's ticklish.
That is,
and he's a torture
it is honestly fucking hilarious. Like, Will Friedle, I love him so much, and I think by this point, the Boy Meets World, like, production and writing had really gotten to, like, this level where they were doing a lot of, like, tongue-in-cheek jokes, and this whole episode, there's this running gag of, like, everyone tickling Eric, and him giving away whatever he's trying to lie about. It's fantastic.
Yeah, sure, I could have shipped out with the other Joes. Fact is, I'm on a secret mission here. I'm guarding the Philadelphia Bell.
You mean the Liberty Bell?
I've said too much already.
It's a Liberty Bell. It's a Liberty Bell.
Although Jack seems to think that he was deemed mentally ill.
They do play it off like that's what it actually was, but Eric is lying that he couldn't go to war because of his flat feet.
So to compensate, he makes a story that saying that he is there to protect the Liberty Bell. Shortly before shipping off, Corey proposes to Topanga, who accepts. So there's a whole scene where, they get all called up. Hey, we're all been called up to war. And right before he leaves, he basically gets on one knee and yes, she says yes. And off he goes to war. Overseas, Alan and company morale is wearing thin for the company. Corey is lonely. And as he is reduced to playing the harmonica and reading letters from Topanga quietly in his head.
That is another great gag where, like, they do a thing where Topanga reads the letter in Corey's head, but Alan shushes him because they're all trying to read their letters, so Topanga starts reading it like she's whispering.
Yes. And then, like, I don't know if did you actually watch this episode?
I did.
Okay, do you remember, like, for some reason, they're out in the middle of this war, and all of a sudden some letter carrier just walks on in with his letters.
He's dressed like a classic postman, and he just walks in with an army helmet, and he's a real sassy postman, too, because he reads he's reading Corey's letters, and he's like, maybe I have a letter for you.
Yeah, and he's like, oh, this one must be from someone special. It smells. So it was pretty funny.
You know what, Sean, I can't expect the mail to be on time with a war on, right?
Mail call.
Anything for Corey Matthews?
Maybe. Ooh, looks like this girl Topanga's got it bad for you.
You read my mail?
Something's got to get me through this war.
So, before going to battle, Corey tells Sean that if he dies and Sean survives, Sean must marry Topanga. Reluctantly, Sean agrees. As soon as the radio informs that there's a truce, Corey runs out, before heading the ceasefire has begun in 24 hours, an explosion sends Corey's dog tags into Sean's hands and convinces everyone that he's dead.
Okay, here's the thing. This scene is, insane. It's really fun because they're all in a bunker and there's a lot of jokes, and there's actually a fun gag where Eric gives Jack a photo of him to take to war with him. So, like, Jack has it framed and all of the guys are convinced that Eric and Jack are dating. But so as soon as they announce that there's a ceasefire or that the war in Europe is over, fucking Corey bolts out of that bunker like you've never seen. Like, he assumes that everybody's already gone home 25 seconds after. He deserves to die.
Yeah, it's like, I'm like, really? Like, this is not how things work in the real world, but okay. And I understand that they have to do it for, for the gag of the show. And
right.
But yes.
And so he can get amnesia.
That's right. Days later, Sean and Topanga prepare to wed. Although nobody truly wants it, they do it because it was Corey's last wish. Amy, however, refuses to believe that her son is dead and sends Eric to Europe to find Corey. So we send the mentally ill one, who is extremely ticklish, out to find his brother.
And Will Friedle is really funny in the scenes in France too. When he gets into like their cafe, he's just like, God, I don't know why all these French people call us rude Americans. And he sits down and he's like, hey, toots, come on, service.
In Europe, Eric and Jack visit a French bistro where they find Corey, who thinks that he is a tortured Frenchman suffering from amnesia.
Yeah.
And he is in love with Versailles, a French woman.
And hammer on the nail.
I mean, come on. Her name is Toulouse.
Churchill.
This is my daughter, Bordeaux. Oh, okay.
Her name is Ava Braun. No.
Eric, unable to jog Corey's memory, agrees to marry him and Versailles. So he agrees to marry Corey in Versailles.
Yep. There's a great joke here where, because we kind of cut from one wedding to another, where Mr. Feeney, for some reason, is performing the wedding of Sean and Topanga, and comments on how weird it is that somehow the principal is able to perform marriages. And then we cut to France, and Eric's like, well, I'm the brother of the groom, so I assume I can perform this marriage, so let's go.
Well, Sean marrying Topanga. This is weird. On the other hand, who would have thought, as principal, that I could perform marriages?
As brother of the groom, I'm pretty sure I'm ordained to perform the wedding ceremony.
Like you said, meanwhile in the United States, Topanga is unable to marry Sean because she feels that Corey is still alive. Amy attempts to reassure her and tell her that she has sent Eric to find him. But Morgan makes her realize that sending Eric wasn't the best way to go.
That is true.
Topanga and Amy then fly to Europe and interrupt the wedding. Corey is unable to remember Topanga until she kisses him, which restores his whole memory. Corey, Topanga, Jack, Eric, and Amy all return to the United States, back into high school. Corey tells Sean he wishes to propose to Topanga with a ring that he found in a Cracker Jack box. Just as he tells Topanga he wants to ask her something, the world returns back to 1997, and Corey gives Topanga the ring.
That's right. It is I think it's actually a really good episode of Boy Meets World. I think William Daniels, who plays Mr. Feeney, of course, he has such like he's an incredibly poignant actor. Like, everything he says has such weight to it. It's amazing. And he is incredibly funny. There's a scene when he comes into the when like there's an air raid siren going off, and he comes in and he's just like, nope, I'm just the street's air raid siren monitor. And he's holding like this megaphone, and he's like, they told me if we win, I get to keep this. And he just walks out. He's fucking hilarious.
That was yep, that was good.
Air raid! Take it easy, everybody. Stay calm. It's just me practicing to be neighborhood air raid warden. They say I can keep this if we win.
But yeah, I think this is probably the best TGIF episode of this Time Chaser storyline. It's really funny. I mean, by this point, Boy Meets World was just cooking on all cylinders. That's not how you cook, I know, but it's a fantastic episode. A lot of fun little jokes. A lot of I think all the Eric being like a dim-witted spy is really fun. And I think, again, like I said with Sabrina, they do a really nice job of like 40ing up all the sets. Like, their kitchen looks really nice in the 40s. The Chubby's where they hang out looks really nice. it's really well done. And I thought the bunker set actually was pretty good too.
Yep.
Anything else to add here, Phil? Or do you want to go on to You Wish?
I think it's your turn to You Wish it up.
All right, let me tell you about You Wish, Phil, because I looked and I could not find the episode of You Wish that Salem was on. I can tell you this much, however. It is an episode called Genie Without a Cause, and if you can believe it, the genie and I believe the name of the family is the Apples. They get sent back to the 50s, and let me read this description from Wikipedia about the episode Genie Without a Cause. The Apples become a stereotypical family, and the genie a rebellious beatnik when a time warp sends them back to the 50s. All I can tell you is, Phil, this episode of You Wish, which aired November 7th, 1997, was so bad that ABC stopped airing You Wish, and they aired the final 6 episodes of their 13 episodes, like at the end of May into like the summer and the end of July, just to get rid of them.
Wow.
After this, there is no more You Wish until May 22nd.
Dang, that's terrible.
I can also tell you that in the end of the episode of Teen Angel I'm about to tell you about, we get like a little cutaway to all of the episodes, and the You Wish one is like the whole family, including the genie's, I believe, grandfather, who's played by Jerry Van Dyke, like all sitting around watching TV, and the genie talking about how TV is so great now in the 90s because there's so many channels, and the joke is that eventually they all settle on watching I Love Lucy. Which, to be fair, I do on like a daily or weekly basis, at least.
Modern technology, 864 channels, movies, comedy, drama, so many wonderful choices.
I hope this is the one where she stomps on the grapes.
Teen Angel, Phil. Teen Angel, the episode title, One Dog Night. Now, in this...
Like the group?
Kind of.
Oh, okay.
In this episode, Sabrina actually is on the show and tries to track down Salem, who, as we noted, swallowed the time ball, and sent everyone back in the Teen Angel cast to 1976, right around the time of the bicentennial. In terms of the actual episode, it really revolves around the mother, Judy, being really sad that she doesn't have a man in her life. So her son asks his best friend and guardian angel, who only he can see, Marty, to turn the family dog, who is the family dog for this one episode, into a man so that the mom can have a date. The dog turns into the guy named Bob, and Bob eventually starts turning back into a dog while they're all at a disco because it's the 70s. Also, once Sabrina shows up in the show, the gag is that Marty, the guardian angel, who can never be seen by anyone, can actually be seen by Sabrina because she's a witch, so he starts hitting on her aggressively and without any success.
Excuse me, I'm looking for my cat.
You can see me? Heavy. Mondo heavy. Major Mondo heavy. You're supposed to be invisible to humans. I'm an angel.
Oh, well, I'm a witch.
A witch? Next you'll be telling me there's genies and boys meeting worlds.
You wish.
Marty, we gotta get him to the men's room. Hey, clear jets. I'm talking to a beautiful girl. So, since you could see me, how do I look?
Like Liberace's lawn jockey?
I'm so desperate, I'll take that as a compliment.
In terms of how Salem is, like, brought into this episode, he's literally just carried in by Steve's younger sister and sends them back to 76 when the mom notes that she used to have a cat like this in the 70s called Cat Stevens.
God.
There is one good joke where the mom's aunt says that I think it was in the 80s she had to rename him, because you know how Cat Stevens renamed himself?
Right.
So the joke is that she had to rename the cat the name that I'm not going to try and pronounce Cat Stevens' name because
I forget what it is. It's I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. You know what? I'll put the clip in here.
Look, I found a stray cat.
Oh, now the excitement begins.
Hey, he looks just like a cat that I had when I was a kid. His name was Cat Stevens.
Yeah, but in the 80s you had to rename him Yusef Ibrahim.
Also, like I said before, in lieu of jokes, there's a lot of references to like, oh my god, the 70s were really different. There's a scene where like this loser kid Kenny comes up to Steve and is like, oh my god, did you watch the last episode of Charlie's Angels? They were dressed up as dumb bimbos. Like literally the phrase he uses. And then he shows off his awesome new digital watch that only costs $400. Like this is the level of comedy in Teen Angel.
Well.
Also, since it is the 70s, in lieu of jokes, we get a lot of like disco dancing. Like, oh my god, people doing Staying Alive. That's hilarious. The actor who plays Bob, the dog turned man,
yes,
I thought actually does a pretty good job of playing a dog in a human body. Like, there's a lot of jokes about him like having to turn around 3 times before he sits down, or getting scared about the mom saying if they're going to get the dog fixed, or drinking out of the toilet. Even like he is giving it a fair go. Like he's trying to portray being a dog in a man's body.
Right.
And the one other note I had was Mike Damus, who plays Marty the Angel, is really irritating. He feels like he's doing sort of like bad stand-up delivery, but he's also got like a very like even early 80s New York kind of delivery to him where he's really grating and irritating. And there is, in case you were worried that there wouldn't be some mildly anti-Semitic scenes, there's a bit where he transforms himself into a rabbi because he's going to turn Boo the dog into a man. So today he is a man.
Boo! Today you are a man. Hi! His pupik is showing.
Exactly. All in all, not a great episode. It's kind of funny where I feel like Teen Angel, this episode of Teen Angel probably gets a Teen Angel on a TGIF scale, and The Boy Meets World, I think, is actually a Boy Meets World episode. But yeah, by the end of it, the way they fix, there's actually a fun scene where Sabrina runs into Salem at the disco, and Salem's dressed in a nice little disco cat suit. And eventually, of course, Sabrina has Salem. They go back, everything gets fixed, and I believe that Teen Angel ends with Marty still trying to get a kiss from Sabrina, which he eventually gets, but then Sabrina pushes him off a cliff, and that's where it ends. Phil.
Yes, sir.
Let's go back to the episode of Sabrina the Teenage Witch and talk about the closing ceremonies, of course, the Back of the Linen Closet Award, and first and foremost, the TGIF scale, the This Good I Feel scale, how we rate all episodes of Sabrina the Teenage Witch. Where does Gadda Sabrina fall on the TGIF scale for you?
Well, I was kind of thinking about this as we were doing the wrap up, to be honest with you, they're usually one of the things I use to grade an episode is how memorable the episode is, and how much it has to do with the actual storyline of the. Basically, this has none of to both. I didn't think it was that great of an episode. There's nothing memorable. There's nothing, it's not one of those episodes that you go, yeah, I remember. Which, ironically, the Boy Meets World episode, I was like everyone in my age, that's what we watch. We watch TGIF. The second I turned on that episode and watched it, I actually remembered the episode and remembered it vividly.
It is a really good episode of Boy Meets World.
So, all said and done, I would say this is probably going to be like a teen angel.
That's fair. I think I would give it slightly higher, probably a Hanging with Mr. Cooper, just because I feel like there are some fun bits. I think that Salem bit and the Salem Mod Squad bit, the all of the Mr. Kraft stuff, and even the Mrs. Quick sexist pig line. I think there are some fun moments in it. It is not a great story. And as you said, it doesn't really factor into the overall season arc or series arc of Sabrina in any way, shape, or form. I do think it is somewhat memorable just because they go back in time. But it's not an incredible episode of Sabrina. But I do think it's fun enough where it's a middling episode. So a Hanging with Mr. Cooper for me. Now, the main event, as always, the Back of the Linen Closet Award, our episodic award for each installment's biggest fashion flop. Phil, as we noted before, not an awful lot to choose from, but what gets your award this episode?
Well, for me, I think it's going to be Sabrina's outfit. The copper shirt with the gold flowers and maroon skirt. I think it was it was a no-go for me on that. Stick it in the back.
I agree with you 100%. Back to the Linen Closet is where it goes. It's just a weird outfit. I guess that they bought it and were like, you know what? This episode's going to air in November. It's very orange. It's the one time where it won't look utterly ridiculous that she's wearing it. Let's just get it on in November.
Yeah, it's it's very fall-ish. It's very fall-y. We can kind of work it in that way. You're absolutely right.
But that is the episode, Phil. Thank you so much for stopping by and for soldiering through with a cold. I do appreciate it a lot.
Oh, it's good. I appreciate it. Thank you very much for having me again.
Always great to have you. And I do want to tell the listeners that, folks, if you want to follow Sabrina's Witch Trials, if you like what you hear, don't turn off your TV, because that's not the Zoom thing. But if you do like the podcast and you want to follow us over on Facebook, facebook.com/Sabrina's Witch Trials, Instagram.com/Sabrina's Witch Trials. A lot of fun videos, memes, photos, all of that fun stuff happening on the Witch Trials Instagram, Facebook, and also on Twitter @Sabrina Podcast. And if you want to listen to us more, you can do so wherever you are, of course, but iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play podcast section on YouTube. Just search for Sabrina's Witch Trials. And, of course, wherever you aggregate your podcasts, you should be able to find us there, too. And if you can't, let us know, and we will be there as soon as we can. The next episode in the lineup, folks, is not one of my favorites. I actually kind of have memories of disliking this pretty strongly, but we'll see how I feel when I have to watch it again. It is Season 2, Episode 9, Witch Trash. I definitely remember it vividly because Sabrina meets her white trash family. But we will talk about that when we get to it. Until then, I want to say thank you one last time to Phil for sticking with us and coming back to the Witch Trials. And to you, listener, I will say thank you and tell you that we will see you in the other realm.
Where's my lunch?
Not half eaten and hidden in this drawer behind me, that's for sure.